Hey, this episode is brought to you in part by Signature Doors and Windows. Now, onto the show.
I happen to have studied architecture as a vehicle to achieve the means of, what I'm trying to accomplish in life, which is kind of deliver good housing. That's my main jam in this world is, trying to figure out ways to deliver good, affordable, good architecture to more people.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's a lacking thing in this world.
Hi. Hello.
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 Hello and welcome to Architecting.
Okay, let's just start that from the beginning.
Hi, welcome to Architecting. I'm Rebecca Wagner here with Adam. Hey, Adam, who's on the podcast today?
Hey, so this one, we have a good one today. We have Josh Oqueli from Bonsai Design Build. So Josh is, do you remember seeing that house go up next to us, close to us from them, with the rooftop garden and the sort of slanted,
Where is it, like kind of the wraparound stair?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, so I feel like I'd heard about their work, and then I was seeing some of their projects go up around, and then hearing about them from more people of just this combination of design build and I didn't realize, but also development. He's an interesting guy. He immigrated to the U.S., or his parents did, and to California, and then moved to Colorado, and kind of didn't quite know what he wanted to do, and ended up going into the Marines, which I don't know if we've had any guests that have been in the military before architecture, but then sort of discovered architecture through a trip to Spain with the military and Gaudi, and came back and really pushed into the profession and went to school for it and worked for a ton of local firms, and then graduated in 2009 and kind of had to figure out what to do with that recession, and developed his own project and started the firm.
Wow, right out of school?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But yeah, he's interesting where he has a real passion for providing good housing and thinking of architecture as that service to provide that housing, and then and also pursuing passive house and thinking about kind of earthship type design, and then being able to build it himself, yeah, it's impressive.
Super cool.
Yeah. So he came over to our house, talked at the dining room table, had a good discussion. So, yeah.
Nice. Looking forward to it.
Cool. Sounds good. Enjoy. Oh, I also want to hear, I can hear everything you're clicking.
Yeah, what do you want?
And the other thing, you're on the podcast for a little bit, but you're going to be on it in a much bigger capacity in our upcoming live event at CU Boulder on October 24th.
Oh, yeah.
You looking forward to it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing another Coffee with an Architect event, panel event, the evening of October 24th, a Monday at 5 o'clock at the Environmental Design School in Boulder. I think we're going to have a great panel, and we're going to get you to talk about a school project, a professional project, and the path, the journey between. The long journey. Do you know what you're going to talk about yet?
I've got some ideas.
Cool. So come check out that event coming up soon, and we'll have the rest of the guest lineup finalized soon as well.
Should be fun.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Hey, we're happy to be sponsored by Modern in Denver Magazine. For over a decade, they've been crafting fantastically curated content on Colorado designers and projects, spreading the gospel of good design within our region.
And I love how the goal of Modern in Denver aligns with the goal of this podcast, to better build up and connect the community of Colorado designers. So go buy a copy of the magazine at your local bookstand, subscribe to their weekly email list, and follow them on Instagram.
Check it out.
So are we recording now?
Yep, we're live.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good to go.
I like to try to make it so it's like less. I feel like we have good conversations, and then all of a sudden interview starts. Let's,
So you're just like you're just recording. You catching it all. Yeah. No, that's good. That's cool. Cool. Well, thanks for inviting me on your show.
Yeah,
This
definitely.
is exciting.
Yeah, it's. I love this. It's not really a job. I love this hobby of mine where it's like you get to meet people like you. Like I've seen your work, I've seen it going up, but there's not much reason for me to reach out to you necessarily in real life. But this gives a great reason, and it's like trying to find more of those opportunities to
Connect,
in general for the community, right?
Yeah,
like I feel like we all kind of want it, but it's hard to do.
And it's especially been challenging over the past couple of years. With the shutdowns, and everyone's been so scattered, and they've been restricted from kind of meeting in person. I mean, obviously, that's changed over the past year, but that I think that put a hinder on things a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of like a double whammy, right? Where people aren't used to meeting, and then everybody got super busy, and then you're like really crunched, and then you can't probably find employees that easy, and
that's a challenge. Absolutely.
I saw you guys are hiring now, and
we're making a big move. Up until this point, so we're like 9 years old.
Oh,
coming on 9 years old in October, so we'll be celebrating our 9th birthday in
wow.
October. Up until this point, it's pretty much been me managing the business, and you know what they say: architects aren't very good business managers.
Yeah.
And so it's been shooting from the hip, for that, and just figuring out as you go. And we're to the point where we need to put our big boy pants on and bring somebody on. So we're looking for like a business manager, controller type of person.
Nice, yeah.
To help us organize our books and organize our business operations and all that stuff. And the idea with that is that then I'll free up my time and be able to focus more back on how I started the firm, which was development.
Yeah.
Architect as developer, that what's the architect's name out of San Diego? Siegel?
Yeah,
Jonathan Siegel.
It's like, is it Jonathan Siegel or Jonathan Segal?
Segal, yeah.
I don't know.
One of those, but that he was. I listened to him a lot in grad school, and was like, I want to be like that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's super interesting. I'm not going to let you skip this. So, who are you? So, if you wrote a book, what would be the two sentences that are on the back of the book that says, "Who are you?"
Yeah, that's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
That's a tough. I thought about how to answer this. It's like there's no good way of answering this. The best I could come up with is like, I'm just like you. I'm another soul trying to figure my way around this world, trying to figure my shit out. Am I allowed to say that? Sorry.
We can slap an explicit on here. That would be explicit. So,
all right. Yeah. I'm just another guy. I happen to have studied architecture as a vehicle to achieve the means of what I'm trying to accomplish in life, which is kind of deliver good housing. That's my main jam in this world is trying to figure out ways to deliver good, affordable, good architecture to more people.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's a lacking thing in this world.
I like that. Yeah, it's a nice focus. So where did that have you always kind of felt that way? Has housing played it plays a central role in all of our lives, right? But not always like a visible way. Did you come to that early on, that idea of housing is important?
I think it kind of developed along the way as through my early career. I went to school at CU Denver. Got my master's there, and then at CU Boulder for undergrad. So I did 4+2 after the Marine Corp. So maybe I can back up and kind of give you that little backstory.
Yeah.
So I'm from California originally, born of immigrant parents. My mom's Mexican, my dad's Guatemalan. and I grew up in the barrio of California, LA.
LA, yeah.
And my parents moved us. Our parents moved us out of there because there was this gang violence. You know, it was tough.
How old were you when you moved out?
I was 15,
Okay,
so I
yeah.
started high school here in Fort Collins.
Oh, cool.
And so I finished high school in Fort Collins at Malampkin, Fort Collins High School, and needed to kind of figure out how to go to school. So I joined the Marine Corp for life experience and for college money.
Yeah.
So I did 4 years in the Marine Corps.
Wow.
And then that stint, still trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life, or what am I going to study? I knew I had to study something, to make a decent living. So I first enrolled at CSU to study engineering. And I did 1 year at CSU, and I quickly realized that, just kind of lame. But
yeah,
while I was doing that, it's just a lot of numbers, a lot of math.
Yeah.
And it's doesn't stimulate the creativity side, and got some of that. So while I was in the Marine Corps, I had a chance to travel a bit, deployments to various places. And one of the places I got to go was to Spain, and I got to go see Antonio Gaudi's church, which is, I don't know if you've ever been there.
Yeah, Sagrada Familia.
Yeah. Sagrada Familia. So that place just blew my mind.
Yeah.
I want to go back and just spend more time there. But it's one of those places that you walk in and it just takes your breath away.
Right.
Like the movie Gladiator. I didn't know men could build such things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that inspired, so that was like, how do people build things? So that's, the engineering side, the number side. How do you design things? That's the creative side. So that was kind of the seed, for wanting to pursue architecture. Even though I started as an engineer, I switched careers and I ended up transferring to Boulder and pursued the architecture career.
Yeah. What was that like? So you were in Spain a little bit. Where else were you in the Marine Corps?
Well, I was stationed in North Carolina, in Jacksonville, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And from there, we got to deploy to different places. I got to deploy to Puerto Rico. I shouldn't say I got to. It was like a humanitarian mission. Went to Spain. And just like various deployments. I went to like California for some training exercises. Fortunately, I was never in any real world combat issues. I got out right when September 11 happened.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of the guys that I was in got recalled and they got sent to war. And, you hear the horror stories of that. So I was fortunate that I didn't get recalled. And I think I did not get recalled because I was in college. And so I was one of the guys that actually was doing something with their life, maybe.
Yeah, right.
That's at least the way I've justified it. But yeah.
So what did, you talked about like the engineering didn't kind of satisfy that creative part of you. What was that like being in the Marines where, I don't know much about being in the military, but like where everything's pretty set and rigid and rule based. Yeah. And were you kind of pushing against that, or did it kind of develop you into where you are now?
Yeah. So initially when I joined the Marine Corps, 18 years old, have no idea what you want to do in your life, but I thought I wanted to pursue a career in law enforcement. But look at me, I'm like $125 soaking wet, you know what I mean? It's 25 pounds. So it was always a challenge to be like this iron fist guy. And so I got in there and I quickly realized that I'm just not cut out for it. That was my MOS, military occupation specialties, military police. So I did get to do some law enforcement stuff, but I was just never that good at it. It was a very regimented life for 4 years. Definitely taught me discipline. That's like the number one thing. One of the big things that I've taken away from that, as well as like this whole mantra that the Marine Corps teaches you, is to whenever you face the challenge, you you're in this challenge, the first thing you do is you improvise. You improvise, you like fake it till you make it type of thing. You adapt to it, and then you overcome it. And so, that I've always had that, and those are principles that the Marine Corps taught.
Yeah. So that had to be interesting then going from there to engineering for a little bit, and then to architecture studio, right?
Yeah.
And you're coming in with a bunch of 18-year-olds, right?
I was the old guy.
You're the old guy.
Yeah.
And probably the organized guy.
Yeah.
And the guy who probably doesn't like pull on ours all the time because you're more organized. But I don't know. What was that experience like getting in? Was it kind of what you expected, or?
I mean, it was a lot of all-nighters, and the reason for that is because I worked my way through college.
Oh wow!
So I had to, I was kind of on my own at that point. So, didn't have like a scholarship or anything like that. So I was like working off or going to school off the GI Bill, and then off of whatever I was making for myself. And in 2005, I think I got my first internship at Oz.
Oh yeah.
Like everybody goes through Oz at some point, it seems like in this town. But I worked at Oz for about 5 years, and I was working 3/4 time, part-time. I was a part-time intern, and going to school full-time. So, it was a lot of like, I would show up to studio and understand the lesson and work enough in studio to say, yeah, I was here. And then I'd check out and go home and, work from home because I was more efficient that way, or, I had to go to work in the next day or whatever. So that was always a balancing act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the biggest thing that surprised you about architecture school? You had this kind of more varied background before this.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely a lot of work. And I was really surprised by the attrition rate. I was surprised to see that so many people dropped out. To me, that wasn't even in my head. Like I was, I did it, and I signed up, and I was like, if I sign up for something, I'm going to do it. Like that's always been my mindset. Just seeing kids drop out left and right, I was like, why?
Yeah.
So that was surprising.
Yeah.
I think there was like a 40% attrition rate out of my class or something like that. It was crazy. Yeah.
But it's, it's something like kind of like your engineering school where you can get in, you could have done that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But if it's not your passion,
yeah,
I'm not spending all this time on
exactly.
it, So I think it is good when kids figure that out early rather than try to push through and we get bad architects in the end. But
definitely study that it's something that you want. It brings a passion to your life.
Right.
Yeah. That's huge.
And so then was it an automatic for you? Like, I want to be licensed. I want to go to grad school right after undergrad. Was that the path? And
yeah, I mean, going through grad school, working, I've always had the mindset that I wanted to study, go into architecture to start my own business. So that was always there. Just that, like an entrepreneur spirit, I've always kind of had that. I always had, wanted to follow that, get to licensure as quickly as possible. It took me all of 5 years to get licensed. This is kind of embarrassing to admit.
That's pretty fast, actually. I mean, that's not...
Well, what I mean by that is like, how the once you take your first test and you pass it, you've got a 5-year window. Otherwise, they start expiring.
Right.
Well, I pushed that because life and
you're like, I need to pass this test.
Yes.
I can't do it yet.
Yes, I remember that I signed up for my last exam, and if I would have failed it, exams would have started expiring, and thankfully I didn't fail it.
Yeah.
But there was a number that I did and had to retake them, and this is why it took 5 years to freaking do it.
But,
yeah.
So you did grad school at CU Denver.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel maybe more molded, or what kind of path did you go down in grad school versus undergrad? How did you kind of become more focused? Was it on the kind of entrepreneurial model, or was there a professor that kind of shaped you in a certain way? Or
I think like as far as like how I chose to go down the residential path in my firm,
or just how you think about architecture, or how you
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, there's there's architects that like to do hospitality or different sectors or whatever. I enjoy residential. I think I went down that path because that's what I was exposed to in my internships, early internships. So working at Oz, I always worked on multifamily projects. And then I did other internship stints beyond that, and it was always multifamily. So my portfolio, my back history portfolio was always in residential multifamily. And I really enjoyed that, but I was missing the personal touch to that. Because when you're doing multifamily projects, you're doing them for developers,
Right.
and developers are, they're thinking about the bottom line,
Right.
not necessarily
In a generic client.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was missing that piece. And so I knew that when I start my own practice, I do want to do residential, but I want it to be more personal.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's why I've taken the firm in the direction that it's going.
Well, and it seems like, you're also, working a lot with like Passive House and have a pretty good focus there. Did you get any of that in school? Where did that sort of come from?
That came later. It didn't come from school, although school, does a nice job at like giving you the passion for sustainability,
Right.
like talking to you about that sort of thing, and understanding that we've got to come up with a better way of living on the planet, because it's not good the way that we're doing things.
Right.
So I always had that mindset, or that mantra back there. So that led me to explore more sustainable housing types. The first kind of sustainable housing typology that I studied was biotecture, earthships. Have you heard of earthships?
Yeah.
And so, I watched Garbage Warrior, Michael Reynolds documentary. I was like, oh, that's awesome. I want to do that.
That was came out kind of when you were in school.
I think so.
Yeah.
So I dug into that and totally understood the systems. I went and stayed at an earthship in Taos. And I was like, I want to build these things. I want to, design them and build them. And so, I understood those principles. And then that sort of led me into Passive House. And I was like, okay, this is a whole new world. This is all about building science and modern technologies. So I, studied that and got certified as a designer and a builder in Passive House through the Passive House Institute in Germany, which is like the grandfather, if you will.
Nice.
We've got one here in the United States, Vias. I don't know a whole lot about it, but
it's not Germany. Yeah,
it's not Germany. It's and Germans, they do it right.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's kind of, I wanted to learn up on the best ways of doing good building. Because we most people, or most developers, most builders, and this is the criticism on the industry in general. We build a code, and code is like the bare minimum. And this is how we end up with like the stucco boxes all over town. Because like developers are just going to build to exactly what code is going to allow. And then, they fall apart in 10 or 15 years.
Right.
And so that's a problem that we need to figure out how to fix. And I'm not a person that relies on authorities to tell me what to do. I'd rather figure it out for myself. And so, that's kind of why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so sort of obsessed with that question or that word good, and we've had a lot of talks with different architects about it, but it's like, what is good architecture? Like, what does that mean to you? I feel like that's an even harder question than who are you, maybe. But
yeah, what is good architecture?
Right. Yeah. Or the definition of architecture, right?
Yeah. So I mean, you can answer that in a lot of different ways. Like, is it aesthetically pleasing? That's one way to look at what good architecture is. And sure, you can judge a building by only that filter. In my mind, good architecture is it does that, but it also takes care of you. It shelters you. That's the fundamental need. Is like humans, we need housing, we need a roof over our head, and we need food and water. Fundamental needs. And if a building fails at protecting you, sheltering you, these deconstructed buildings that leak. In my mind, that's not good architecture. But yeah.
Yeah. I like that definition of sort of, I mean, at a basic level, it's protection. Yeah. It's health and safety.
Yep.
Yeah. And then of course there's degrees on that of how it, yeah. I always like to think of architecture as like the intentional ordering of space and form, so it's about the intention. So, and then you have degrees of intention, or how intentional you're able to do and how many layers of that you have. But
yeah, obviously it takes, it takes some talent, it takes some skill and foresight and, all this stuff to be able to put everything together.
Right.
Like an architect's got to understand code and zoning, life safety issues, and the needs of the end user.
Environmental.
Yeah. So it's a lot of organization. So, that all makes a good architect, but does it really make a good designer?
Right.
Is that it? Yeah, you can a draftsperson can put that building together. You just understand the code.
Right.
And you understand that the client wants 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and you slam that shit together and you put up a stucco box.
Yep. Yeah.
But is that good architecture? Is that good design? That's a question.
Right. So you graduate school, then what's next? Are you still working at Oz or?
No.
No.
I was laid off from Oz in 2008. During the recession, just like everybody's sad story.
Yeah.
And so that is when I started looking to start my own practice. And so I did. I started a practice then called Studio Q4. Q4 was my call sign in the Marine Corp. And so started with that as a traditional architecture practice, just offering drafting services. I was unregistered at that time, so it was a design firm.
Yeah.
And I did that for a minute, and started taking on contract jobs here and there as they started to come up, as the economy started to get stronger. And then eventually I ended up taking jobs at KTGY and Shears Atkins Rockmore, Workshop 8, to name a few of the firms that I worked, between that period until 2013.
Nice.
2013.
Taking off more of the Colorado firm, architecture firm boxes. Yeah.
Good
experiences,
it's
right?
good to get the experience. Yeah, absolutely. And it was that taught me of what I don't want to do. You know what I mean? So working at the big corporate firms, I recognize that that's not what I want to do long term.
Yeah.
And it's I learned tricks or things that I didn't want to do in my own practice, like working 60-hour weeks.
That's funny. That's a trick.
Yeah.
Watch my magic trick. I don't sleep much.
Yeah. Well, it's like so we have a culture where we work 4 10-hour days, and we have Fridays off.
Nice.
And so that there's been all kinds of studies that show that people are way more productive and happier, and it just leads to better product.
Yeah.
And I've seen that. Or the people that work with us that work at our firm, I think they're happy there.
Yeah. And you yourself, do you stick to that pretty well? I mean, that has to be hard, right?
It's hard.
Yeah.
I stick to it in the sense that I don't open the door. So I have live work.
Okay.
And so my home office is our headquarters, and I live there.
Oh, nice.
So I stick to it in the sense that I don't open the door and I hang out in flip flops all day. So
I'm not officially working if I'm not wearing socks.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know who Kevin O'Leary is?
No.
Yeah, he's like this investor guy. From Shark Tank.
Oh yeah.
And so he puts on the suit jacket and he gives us interviews, but he's wearing beach shorts underneath that.
Oh, nice, yeah.
So it's kind of like that. Just don't you don't you're hanging out at home.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's like setting those expectations, right? That I'm not really supposed to be working now, and because it's you can overflow that bathtub, right? You can keep pouring water and keep putting time in, and it's it's so difficult. But
so I still work on Fridays. I'll answering emails and reviewing doing drawings if I've got the time for that. But it's more low key because I'm not like meeting after meeting and phone call after phone call.
Yeah, with employees as well, right? I mean,
yeah.
Exactly. So then tell me, so you worked for a bunch of firms, and then I guess about 9 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bonsai, or whatever the beginnings of that was. So tell me about the kind of genesis there.
Yeah. So I always wanted to start my own practice, and so during my last job, which was KPGY, I ended up I was fixing and flipping houses at the same time. I started with my first fix and flip. I bought my own house with a VA loan, so that's a benefit from the military. I bought my first house with a VA loan. That was a piece of work. Ended up doing all the work myself, just kind of like gutted the place, was sleeping on plywood floors for a number of weeks. But that was a good experience because it got me the contracting experience. And I was able to build a little capital to kind of roll into bigger and better projects.
Yeah.
I got to the point where I was able to do a single family development. And so I was designing that one, like sort of moonlighting, if you will. And it's for myself, so it's not really
just because you're bored and you don't have time. Yeah.
Right. I was working full time.
Yeah.
But designing this house and working it through the entitlement process, and once I got it permitted, that's when I gave my 2 weeks notice, and I said, okay, this is it, we're going in, and that's when I launched the firm.
Did you GC that yourself?
Yep. Well, I did, but I didn't have my license then. I had a friend pull a license for a permit for me, and so I managed it under his supervision, and that gave me the experience to round out what I needed to be able to pull my own GC license.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
And so, I always like to hear the first project stories of a firm, but then I feel like the more interesting ones are the second one, because it's like somehow you get a project, but then it's like, okay, I'm a firm, now what?
Yeah.
So like what came next?
Yeah. So client-based work came next. And that was a learning experience. One of my first projects was for a client that hired us to do a pop top for them.
And did they see your other house, or they just knew you? Or
at this point, I had developed a single family duplex and like a remodel. So that's how I built my portfolio.
So after the single family, you did a duplex ground up?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we did a duplex, and then did a little Denver bungalow that we ended up gutting and rehabbing, and then, sell it.
Yeah.
That was kind of
just keep rolling it in.
Yeah. And so that was like the hardest thing of starting a practice, is like having a portfolio, that you can put up and say, this is the work that I've done. When you start a firm, you don't have that.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, nobody's going to give you work. So that was the biggest probably challenge in starting my own firm.
But it didn't stop you too much, because you were smart, because you're like, I'm going to be my own client, and you were doing it that way. But because that can only kind of get you so far, possibly in the beginning. But
it was a way to build a portfolio. But I always had that Jonathan Siegel inspiration. So I was like, I want to do what he's doing, and I want to figure out how to scale this. What ended up happening is I started taking on client work, because once I had enough portfolio work and was able to show that we can do it, people started hiring us.
Yeah.
And so it was.
How soon was that? Like, so when you started at what, 2013? 13. You're doing the single family and the duplex. When did you get that first project?
The first real project, as I call it, was that pop top. Not too far from here, actually. Over on. I shouldn't say that.
We can bleep it out if you want. But
I'll give you the address later so you can check it out.
Good.
Yeah. So it probably came around 2015. So I probably was doing my own stuff for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Before we started getting some client work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting to hear. You know, you can look at all these firms and you say, oh, look at all their work on the website.
Mm-hmm.
Like they got that right away, or they did whatever. No, it took 2 years for the phone to call ring and like pretty get good stuff coming in. And
totally. You know, up until that point, I had probably done like a client bathroom remodel or something like that. You know, little stuff. I remember I got hired to do an as-built, and then that led to designing a little addition. So
I already got the drawings. Come on, give me the project.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, little stuff like that happened. But it was definitely having to build our own portfolio to, you know.
And who was it? Was it just you? Who's our? Yeah, is it? Yeah.
Well, now we're up to, you know, we're still a small firm. We're up to 8 individuals in the firm, and back then it was me out of my living room and then like a contract intern. You know, that just hired somebody from the schoolhouse.
Right. Yeah.
And so I did that until we needed a full-time person, and then, you know, just the natural progression of things.
Yeah. So you were talking about earlier, wanting to hire somebody to free you up to do development again.
Yeah.
Have you been able to keep that thread of development going throughout, or
no? It's kind of
those clients take over.
Clients just take over your life. Yeah. Yeah.
Those clients with their money and their consistent paying
and their work.
Their work. Clients. Yeah.
So no, we've been fortunate that we've been busy with client-based work. And so that's, you know, we've been able to grow the firm that way. But it's definitely something that I want to get back to. Dabbled a little bit in it. I ended up acquiring a piece of property over in Rhino that I was able to piece with the neighbor together, a little parcel, and then kind of put a development idea together and marketed that to developers, and ended up selling that. And now there's a 8-story, 49-unit tower going up there.
Oh wow!
So you know, I can say that I had a hand in putting that deal together.
Who's developing that?
Shanahan Development.
You know, I just got beers with him the other day. Our sons are like best friends.
Oh, no way!
And he was talking about you. Yeah,
Jeff.
Jeff.
He's a good guy. Yeah, he's a really good guy. Affordable housing.
Yeah.
So you know, that's the angle that I'm trying to you know, base our practice off of is you know, delivering good architecture to more people.
Right. Yeah.
And affordable. You know, like that market is highly underserved.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's another interesting guy of that engineering background, and then just sort of flipping homes and then pulling himself up and doing towers now.
He's doing good stuff.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a development angle, you know, that's we kind of did. And I call it a development because it is. And Jonathan Siegel actually says this is the best way to get that development experience is to develop your own home.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's what I'm doing. My wife and I ended up buying a piece of property over in Curtis Park.
Oh, nice.
And we're going to put a single family house on it and an ADU on it, and rent out the back and use the front space as a home office, and you know, do that for a few years and then do it again.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I know he kept doing that, right? Where I'm jealous of those sites that he found, because they would be like a 2-story, like urban kind of storefront thing that he would have his office in and live, and then do that every 3 years and kind of bigger and bigger. And
San Diego must have different zoning, because like I looked for that here.
Really,
it's impossible to find.
Really,
you know, because it's got to be a commercial zone here in Denver. Like you can't do that in a residential zone district.
Right. So I guess you could still do that where you have it's mixed use, where you have a full commercial in the lower, and then
So we looked for a long time for something like that, but it was like you have to go into the commercial zoning areas, and you know, those are very expensive, and usually they're, you know, you're getting beat up by actual developers.
Right. Yeah. People with actual money.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
Nice. Well, you know, it's like eight people is a lot. You know, it's like having my own company of 2 people, and like, how do we feed our
Yeah.
2 mouths,
Yeah.
and like 8 builds up, right? That's a lot of people. So, we kind of jumped from the 2 to 8.
Mm-hmm.
What was like maybe your most trying or difficult day in a firm? Does building your firm kind of between that phase, does anything stick out for you?
Trying. So, getting sued sucks. And so that is probably, tying back to my first real project.
Oh, really?
That's the one that, kicked my butt.
Ouch.
So it was a pop top, and I ended up getting sued for nail pops. And nail pops happen, like shrinking, swelling of organic material.
Yeah.
We tried to rectify the situation, but she was a contentious client. And so anyway, that long story short, that was trying, because that drug out for a number of years. If we started that project around 2015, 2016, that just settled.
Wow.
Like 3 months ago or something like that.
And now you're like, I don't even care about this pop top. It's such a small project. Like, I don't like.
Yeah. But like, getting sued and going through that stress of like, man, this is probably going to sink me. It's going to sink the firm. Like that's a problem. That sucks. But I learned a lot from it.
Yeah. Was that even something that was on you guys in the drawings, or what? Like, we can edit this out if you want. But
no, it's fine. We built it. I built it.
Oh, I see.
So I was the builder on it. It's not. It wasn't. I won the case. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, we won the case, and we ended up actually covering our bases. Financially speaking, it just sucked because there was like 5 years of contention there.
Brain drain. Yeah. Wow.
So we were completely justified and right in our defense and how we handled the project. But there's some crazy people out there.
Yeah. Wow.
Like I actually think that doing design build helps with limiting your liability. So, as an architect, we know a lot of stuff, but we don't know everything.
Right. Yeah.
And so sometimes you forget to draw a detail, or you misdraw it, or, whatever. And if you're handing that set of drawings to another builder, and that builder builds it according to how you drew it, and it goes wrong, then the finger points back at you.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas if you're building it, you have an opportunity to fix your mistake.
Yeah. With the contractor and client, you have 2 fingers pointing at you.
Yeah.
With just a client, one. Yeah.
Yeah. And then sometimes the client doesn't even have to know, because like if you're under construction and you recognize that you did misdesign something while it's under construction, because we're on site all the time, tending to our projects, we can collaborate in the field, with our designers and our architects and our our builders, that are the guys that are building, because we're all the same crew, and we figure it out and we make it right.
Nice.
So
yeah. So you talked a little bit about like earth ships, and it's like that's like have this feeling, right? Like that's kind of what I want to do, or what I want to be. Have you been able to get close to that, with your own work?
Yeah. So we got a chance to design an earth ship, and actually you can't call them earth ships because that's a trademark. So Michael Reynolds, the architect that developed that, earth ships is his trademark. So it's not an earth ship. It's a house that's designed in the biotecture standard. So biotecture. So yeah, we designed a biotecture house in Pueblo.
Yeah.
And so that was cool. And we actually got to go out and spend a couple days pounding tires, helping them build that thing.
Oh, so it's actually with tires.
Yeah.
Talk about the strategies and systems that went into that.
Yeah. Well, it's very simple. It's basically rammed earth. Very fundamentally at its core, it's a rammed earth home. So you stack tires on the north side, and you pound dirt into them, and you build this wall up, and so you've got a cave house, and along the back side of that tire wall, bury cisterns, water cisterns that will catch your water. So the roof slopes to the north. You catch your water, and it sits in those cisterns until it's ready for use in the house. And you filter it. You use it for potable. You use it to flush your toilets. At the end of the day, you run it through a south-facing greenhouse. They call this a biocell, and it's gray water that you're running through this bioswale, so the plants love it. So you grow just abundance of food in these greenhouses. So it's
and the plants are essentially acting as a thermal mass that's then creating heat and radiating back, or
well,
not really?
The greenhouse is south facing, or
right.
The south face of the house is all glass glazing, and you've got to get the angle right. You've got to get the depth right. And so Michael Reynolds, in his Earthships, he's dialed this in. So you sort of follow that technique, because if it's already figured out, why would you go reinvent the wheel? And so
it's like a double, like the greenhouse becomes like a double skin facade essentially, and then you control the ventilation through it. And does it? I want to say does it work, but there's a certain amount of maybe a little bit of guessing, right? And then have you been monitoring it or system? And this is the Morrison house.
So
the Morrison.
That's another one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What's this one that you did?
I think it was maybe the Pueblo.
Okay.
Earthship. And then so that one, that one's a true to its name Earthship, if you will, biotexture house. And those clients, they're building it still. They're still trying to finish it. We designed and built that Morrison house, which used the biotecture principles. And the way that we did that is the cave, it's like completely sealed, and we use Pastelfeld's principles to kind of air seal that envelope. And it's got mechanics. It's got an ERV, energy recovery ventilators for fresh air. So it's got all the modern stuff, but then the south facing greenhouse is basically an attachment. It's not part of the building envelope.
Okay, yeah.
So that's how we got around kind of the code requirement there, not being able to run gray water through your house.
Oh, so that's what it is.
Yeah.
How'd you get around that with Pueblo, or
that was in Morrison?
Yeah, but with
in Pueblo,
yeah.
I don't think they're gonna do it. I don't think they're gonna run the gray water through their bioswale.
Yeah.
I think they're just gonna run fresh water through it.
Oh man.
Yeah.
No, that's so cool. In undergrad we did a whole semester of that sort of passive houses, right? And thinking about it in different ways, and I feel like it's so hard to get back to that, to find the client who's that interested in it, and get all the things to kind of align. But it seems like you guys are positioning yourself in a pretty good spot of being sort of that expert. And when that comes along,
Yeah, and this goes back to the whole, like, if there's not somebody that's willing to hire you to do it, you got to do it yourself.
Right.
Mindset, and then how I started the practice. So we're working on a biotexture community development. It's theoretical at this point, but we're working on a design for a biotexture community that we intend to go and look for property that we can potentially put this on, and try to put a deal together where it's going to have 3 components, and I'm doing this in collaboration with a Earthship guy that went to the academy, and he understands the principles, and he's kind of like a community organizer type of guy. But our goal is to develop this thing. It's going to have 3 components. It's going to have like a teaching component, so it's going to have a community center that people can come to and learn about these principles, because the idea is to teach people how to do this so they can go home and do it themselves.
Right.
It's going to have a rental component, like a short-term rental, like an Airbnb, and then like a permanent housing. So some biotecture homes within the community.
Cool.
And so we're trying to apply all these biotecture and passive principles and permaculture principles and just make it like a radically sustainable community. And then that should be a plan that could be replicated really anywhere.
Yeah. So is the housing, is it single family or so it's all, and because that's what I'm interested in, like how you could do a development like that, right? Development, you're trying to get more density, but more density you get less solar access possibly, and
because they need their space,
right? Yeah,
and they all have to be oriented a certain direction. So it's a whole different way of thinking about planning.
Yeah,
I'm not a planner, but
right.
Yeah.
How many units is this kind of the idea of it? Like
and obviously it's going to be context dependent,
right?
Depending on the site. But the one that we're theorizing, it's got 15 homes, and 15 short-term rentals, and then one community center.
Yeah.
And again, this is a prototype. It's totally theoretical. We don't know what kind of site, but that can be scaled up or down, depending on what kind of site we end up with. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I mean, like you're saying, you have to do that, right? Like, otherwise, you're just going to be getting the clients that you kind of get from whatever the last thing you did, which might not be what you want to be doing, and to be able to pour that time and resource into those theoretical things. And, it's difficult, but
this design build way of doing things, of delivering architecture, and then developing design build yourself, you're sort of vertically integrating the whole process,
right?
And that, from what I've been able to appreciate from this whole thing, is that that's the best way of being able to experiment with this type of housing.
Yeah.
Because we can control the costs. If we don't want to, we don't have to pay ourselves a fee. You can kind of roll that over into the development model. So it allows you to do that trial and error that you need to do to develop this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's cool. I mean that's the dream, right? But it's a lot of balls to be juggling. What is the? Do you have a sense of what that vision is, right? Of how big you get, how you see certain design development firms, and they get kind of bigger and bigger and bigger, and then the architecture kind of drops off, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not sustainable anymore. You can hire somebody easier, or vice versa with construction. Do you have a sense of like how you want to dial yourself in?
Like, that's a good question. Like, how big do we want to get?
Right. Like how. Yeah.
I'm not sure. That's a tough question. That's one of those unknowns. I mean, I feel like maybe like 20, 30 people, and then it starts to get too corporate.
Right. Yeah.
And you
turn into those firms you didn't want to be.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The way that we're structured, it's like a employee ownership. That's so everybody and I tell this to everybody that I end up hiring, it's like we're bringing you on, and I'm looking as a potential partner. Because what we're trying to do is I'm trying to set up so the architects manage the architecture firm, and the contractors manage the contracting firm. And then now with this move of bringing in a business manager, operations manager, then that guy's going to manage the business.
Right. Yeah.
And then that way, the companies can kind of stand on their own 2 feet, and we can, run this development stuff right through the process.
Yeah. And then ideally, on Fridays, you're just wearing flip-flops and not on your computer.
Yeah,
right?
From Hawaii.
From Hawaii. Yeah, exactly.
Or the yacht,
What is the makeup of the office right now in terms of, like how many partners or contractors or?
Yeah. So we've got 2 designers. So, they can't call themselves architects. They're not registered quite yet. 2 designers, a marketing admin gal, myself, and that's kind of the design firm. And then on the build side, I've got a partner, and then we've got 3 employees that are kind of crew, and we're looking to hire a 4th to kind of get a 4-man crew that we can then split up and kind of have a different job sites.
And so, are you able to build most of your projects, or?
So yes and no.
Yeah.
We do both. We do design work and we do it for just developers, or we'll do it for just a client, and then they can go off and hire their own GC. But most of the stuff that actually ends up rolling into a project, we're design building it. We're doing the build ourselves. Yeah. Um, Unfortunately, because we're design build, uh, we also have the burden of telling the client how much a project's going to cost early on, and then a lot of projects die.
Right. You don't give them enough hope early on, and
the luxury of being a design firm only is that you get hired and you get paid to design cool shit,
right?
And you document it, but you're not responsible for telling the client what it's going to cost,
right? Ballpark, I'm thinking this.
Ballpark,
don't hold me.
Yeah.
I'll whisper a number to you, but don't write it down.
Yeah. I'm not a contractor.
Yeah, right.
I'm not a builder. Well, we do have to tell our clients that off the bat, and so a lot of times we're the bad guy, and so projects don't end up moving forward because we do give them that reality check. Brandon in our firm, he's basically right hand guy. He's been with the firm for 5 years. He has this thing. He says, "Bonsai handing out reality checks since 2013."
We hand out checks instead of receiving the checks for the projects.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Where did that name come from, Bonsai?
I watched a lot of Karate Kid when I was a kid.
Nice.
No, yeah, seriously, I think that's where it really stemmed from.
Huh.
It's got a catchy word, flow,
Right.
Bonsai Design Build. But the real, I guess, or the more serious justification, or the where it comes from, is that I correlate the art of bonsai to architecture, the process of architecture, and that with bonsai you're taking something that's it's just there, it's just kind of doing its thing, but you can mold it into something beautiful,
right, over a long amount of time, right? With a lot of persistence
and a lot of patience.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, a lot of vision, and that's architecture in a nutshell.
Yeah,
think about it. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. Nice. I think you talked in the beginning about providing, I forgot what you said, providing maybe safe or maybe just good housing. That's the sort of core of this. What is your sense of community, or who is your kind of community within Denver, Colorado, and how might that help with this kind of path or direction?
That's tough because I work from home. I don't get out much.
Right.
So like my free time, it's I hang out with my wife, and we go camping a lot. So
nice.
You saw my rig, as I drove up. So that we do that a lot. We get out to the backcountry. So my community is nature.
Huh.
I just get out into the sticks as much as often as possible. I do a lot of running. So like I'm training for a marathon right now. So just getting into my own head and going out there, that's kind of a meditation practice.
Nice. Yeah.
So it's that, and then as far as like community, like it's my work. It's people that I interact with on a day-to-day basis. So it's my coworkers, which obviously we couldn't do this without them.
Right.
We need each other. So this is why I consider them partners. Every one of them. Because one of them quits, we're up shit creek.
Yeah. Right.
And so we have a very positive and good work culture, I think. And then it's other colleagues, like developers like Jeff. I would consider him a pretty good, pretty good solid part of my community.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I mean, with the contracting side of it, it opens up a whole other window of subcontractors probably, and that whole network, right? That's most of the battle is trying to keep good subcontractors, I assume.
And it's tough right now to find good subcontractors. Fortunately, we're small enough that we're not running into the issue of like, we can't find an electrician, because we're building 3 projects, right? So we've got 3 projects under construction, and we're getting ready to start my house, so we'll have 4. So with our team, with our 5, will be 5-person build team, we can handle that. And then juggling 1 or 2 plumbers, 1 or 2 electricians, we can shuffle that around, but it's tough to find new subcontractors,
right?
And we're constantly looking, for new subcontractors, but they're hard to come by.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I just we never met before, and been seeing your work coming up and around the neighborhood as well, and just interested in you guys, and just really interested in this design develop model. I'm our company is trying to go down that way slowly, and it's funny actually. I have 3 developers on in a row. You'll be the 3rd. So
really?
We had Christian Butler on, and then I just interviewed Dana Crawford this week, so she'll be on, and then you. So it's interesting getting into this, right? But it's just it seems like such a smart model, and you guys are doing it with construction and with energy efficiency and innovation, and so appreciate you striving for good built environment here. So thanks.
We got to figure it out. The government's not going to figure it out for us.
Right. Yeah.
That's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for coming over.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
You can visit architecting.com. That's architect-ing.com to see images from this week's guest.
And please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.
Have a great week and keep connecting.
What made you decide to start this podcast?
Yeah, I moved here 5 years ago, and
where are you from?
So I grew up in Kansas.
Okay.
And then
my ex-wife's from Kansas.
Oh, really? Where?
Wichita.
Oh, yeah. So I grew up right north of Wichita.
She was a Jayhawk.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, that's good. I'm a Wildcat. So.
Okay.
Yeah, and then my wife and we got married young, right out of school. She's an architect at Gensler.
Okay.
And had her own firm in Wichita in 2009. Like, we got one project for my vegetarian uncle making a hot dog restaurant.
Oh, cool.
And that lasted us for like 2 years. Kind of built a lot of it. But and then we moved to the Netherlands, where she went to grad school, and then I went to grad school in Connecticut. We lived there, and then spent 6 months in Mexico City, and then moved here.
Oh wow, Mexico City, that's cool.
Yeah,
it was experience.
Really cool. Yeah, really cool. One of my professors from grad school hired us to come down to her firm. But I knew I was coming to Denver, and so was just starting to reach out to people I wanted to work for, and it's just so fun. Like I was pitching it kind of like, hey, let's go get coffee. I want to figure out what the scene's like here, and so did that, and then got a job, and then it's kind of like, well, you don't have much of a reason to do that anymore. And then I teach at CU, and so I can do that to like bring jury in and stuff. But it just got to the point where I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to talk architecture with people. And I want to, and it's like, somebody like this never heard of, I was talking to somebody about you guys, and it was like some architect. I was like, you have to know bonsai. I'm like, no, I don't. I was like, how do you not know each other? And so the whole idea is, to kind of make like an encyclopedia of our times in a way, and just connect people. And but
that's awesome. No, I like when so my marketing gal Jordan is the one that reached out.
Yeah.
I had heard of your podcast, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. It's like, reach out to them, see if they'd be willing to have us on.
Yeah.
I didn't think that we would, you'd, because you've got people like Dana Crawford on here.
Well,
and she's like a shaker and mover in town. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I got you too, and that's what I love, right? Like I said, you guys were on my list. Like, so many people are like, what, podcast is going to suck. It's going to last for like a year, and then you're going to run out of architects. And there's so many architects.
There's a lot. Yeah.
And, I feel bad because I haven't quite even touched like outside of Denver. There's so many people in the mountains and south and north, and but it's kind of, I'm getting to the point where a lot of people like you are reaching out, and I'm like, yeah, if you reach out, let's build community, let's do it.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, I'm booked out through December or something, and it's hard to get to everybody. You know.
Are you working right now somewhere?
So I have my own firm.
Okay.
Yeah, started about a year ago.
Okay. How's that going?
Pretty good. Yeah. I mean, I have a partner in Connecticut, so it's a remote firm. And so yeah, we have.
I think I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so we have we have a house about to be done in gypsum. Mm-hmm. We have like an indoor pool addition in Kansas that's almost done. We're doing like a renovation of a house in Pennsylvania. We've got a house addition in Littleton and then a commercial TI in Rhino. And so it's like enough little things that are building up. And we were kind of lucky enough. I say lucky enough. My partner was furloughed, and he had for 3 or 4 months, and he just sat there and did theoretical projects and renderings. And so we have this kind of like log of projects, or at least it kind of looks. And he's really good at realistic renderings, and so a lot of people are like, "Oh, you built that?
Awesome.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Right.
It's a portfolio.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, it's building. This is the third time I've started a firm. I did once with my wife, and then we went to grad school, and then I did another time where I went off on my own, and I just got lonely. And I can't do this for myself. By yourself, and so went and worked for a firm, and then did this now. But
Cool. It's hard to start a practice.
Right. Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. So it's like you gotta get that portfolio. That's the number one thing.
Yeah.
Once you get a portfolio, then it starts to get easier, I think.
Yeah.
Well, we finally started getting that just 2 years ago.
But like you're saying, it takes time, right?
Yeah.
Like it takes 2 years for the phone to call or whatever, and I don't know. Do you know Christian Butler much?
I've heard of his name.
Yeah,
I may have met him at some point.
He kind of flies pretty low under the radar, but really similar story to you. Kind of came to architecture a little bit later, and he actually graduated in 2009 from grad school, and just developed his own duplex.
Okay.
And then has never worked for anybody, and just
so he's doing straight up development.
Yeah. He does some fee for service, but he'll do some projects, and then he'll go take a van out cross country for a year, and awesome. And he's held on to enough of these duplexes, I think, that he's enough passive income coming in that.
That's the way to do it.
The dream, right?
Sounds like a smart dude. Yeah. That's ultimately the way I'd like to take this practice, is to get it so that we're just basically doing our own development work,
right?
And we can fire our clients.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I think we can always take on that selective client, the right one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's reasonable and understands that shit costs money. So.
But yeah, especially when you start working for bad developers, who are making bad decisions and then profiting off of your good work, it's like, I can't do it. No,
that's discouraging.
Especially once you've done it. I think that's a big step for me. So we have a third partner who's he's in New York, and he works for the family who owns the Mets and really big scale stuff.
Yeah.
So that the idea is we bring him in and we do development, but it's just it's scary, right?
Yeah.
And that's I keep hearing you just need to do that first project or flip that first home or whatever, and you learn so much, or you get sued or whatever, but the next time is better, But it's where do you find time, enough resources, land,
Yeah. You gotta have capital to be able to do that. So it's tough. I was fortunate I had the VA, and I was able to start with that. I used the VA loan to get my start.
Put your time in for that, though.
Yeah. Give 4 years of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, if you don't have that, it's tough to get into the development game.
Right.
I wouldn't say I'm a developer yet, but trying to be.
Right.
Trying to figure that out.
You're starting it.
I'm pretty local, so I haven't ran into any big, star architects or anything like that. I mean, I could probably tell you my heroes, my architects that I look up to. Jonathan Siegel, I keep bringing up his name, but it's the dude's figured it out. He's doing his own architecture. He's developing his own stuff, and he's doing beautiful work. I don't know if that qualifies as a good building. You know, that's another question. Like, is his stuff leaking? You know, like, is it like energy efficient?
Yeah.
You know, like that's where that's kind of the other measuring stick that I like to use is like, is it performing well? You know, some of the stuff that you see on his website, it looks really cool. But like, I can see that detail. That's a big ass thermal bridge, and it's all around your building.
Well, you're in San Diego, you know.
True.
But he's cheating a little bit.
Yeah,
but that is a good point.
Yeah.
Those thin concrete slabs he has coming out.
Yeah. I'd love to meet him one day, and that would be cool. But
I've been like watching the low high performance house going up. That's really interesting. You know, like
the low high. Oh yeah, it's done.
Yeah. I just love, like, I love the form of the sort of interlocking stairs. You know, and like it's interesting where, you know, you go by and you're like, okay, that's how they conform to the envelope, the zoning envelope, or the type here, or whatever.
Yeah,
and you don't see that. You know, like I feel like it's kind of rare to break out of that or that kind of typology. Is there a good story about how that came about, or
it was an accident?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we came up with a concept where it had this south-facing greenhouse. So these clients, they're big gardeners, and so it was always going to be about gardening. And so we designed this house that's got a big south-facing greenhouse. 2-story greenhouse, and then we priced it out and gave them a budget, and they're like, no way, we can't afford this, so we got to redesign it. And then they went and got a different GC because, you know, sticker shock, we're the bad guys here. And so then the other GC came in and started, you know, like, well, you got to do this and that. And then so we VE'd a bunch of stuff at that kind of after that sort of discussion. And then it became about, how do we get to the roof deck? You know, how do we get access to the roof decks? And they wanted access to the roof decks from both the interior and the exterior. And so it was, you know, it was just a VE situation and a response to their needs of trying to get access to all these outdoor spaces, and then the zoning. You know, the zoning has you step things back because of the bulk plan and all that. Yeah. But that house is pretty cool. It's high performance. Is built with SIPs, structural insulated panels, and we used Alpine windows. Have you heard of Alpine?
No.
They're a window manufacturer here, local. Their factories in Louisville, and they make American made high performance windows, which is cool because most high performance windows come from Europe, Germany.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, to get an American product, that's pretty cool, and that's one of the things that I tried to I've tried to like push for, is always let's look for local stuff as much as possible. It's, you know, globalism, I think, is what's leading us down this path of shit falling apart.
Yeah. Would you guys work with like a specific engineer, like MEP engineer, a lot to kind of engineer these out, or
MEP
systems? Figured out.
No, and not. No, we don't have like a specific relationship with an MEP because residential doesn't require it. The way that we design the performance, the energy aspect, is through a HERS report usually. So
what's that?
Well, HERS.
Yeah.
Oh, I forget what it stands for. I can't even remember what HERS stands for, but it's a it's a model. So and we don't, I don't know how to do them. So we always consult that out. I forget what the firm's name is, but they will model the building. You know, they input your R values and your windows and your orientation and all that stuff, and then based on that input, they'll tell you what your heat load and your cooling loads are, and then you can size a HVAC system to it. So that's the way that we've always approached things, that we've done things in residential.
But and then how are you staying like innovative and thinking about systems in different ways. You know, that's just your own research, or
that comes from the passive house side. Because the idea with passive house is that you don't need a large mechanical system. You know, so what we typically will specify is and definitely an ERV, because we're designing our homes and our structures to be so airtight that you need ventilation.
Right.
So like you'll hear some builders say that a home needs to breathe.
Right.
And so this is why they make them so that there's, they leak. That's kind of what, I don't know, in my opinion, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because, like with every organism in the world, we breathe through a mechanism that's designed to breathe, like our lungs.
Right.
And then so the ERV is a home's lungs.
Yeah. It's like a ducted system. I mean,
it's just a little box that's constantly pulling in fresh air, and it's extracting stale air. And so it's feeding the fresh air to the living spaces, and then it's extracting the stale air from like bathrooms, laundry rooms, that sort of thing. As it's doing that, it's exchanging energy, so it's crossing the paths. It doesn't mix the air, but it's just like the it's like
heat exchanger
basically.
Yeah.
So like the cold air comes in from the outside, and then it crosses with the warm air that's being extracted, and then it raises it up to a certain temperature, so that it's not a total loss of energy,
right?
But you got constant fresh air, and then so that's the number one thing that we do. We specify, and that's cheap. An ERV is like $2,500. $3,000,
Right.
And so there's that. And then for the actual conditioning, well, in Colorado, you don't really need AC. So sometimes we'll push for like, you can get away with it without AC, especially if you build a good envelope.
Right. And orientate it correctly. And
shade
it correctly.
So you don't get this huge solar gain. But, most people can't they need AC.
Right.
So we often will specify mini splits with a heat pump. So there's a heat pump out in the yard that works in both directions. And so in the wintertime, it does heating, and in the summertime, it does cooling. And then there's a mini split head in kind of the critical spaces.
Yeah.
So that's really the system that we use a lot. Like up in that Morrison Earth House, no AC. And we can get away with that because it's up at elevation.
Right.
It just has radiant heating and an ERV.
Nice.
Very simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the idea with passive house, is that if you have a tight enough and well insulated enough envelope, you're not going to lose that energy that you're putting into it.
Yeah.
And
you're getting that most of the time with SIPs. Are you using SIPs on a lot of projects, or
no?
Yeah.
I've used SIPs. We've used SIPs on 2 homes. So like every house is like an experiment.
Yeah.
Which is another cool kind of byproduct of design build, is that we can experiment with different building techniques. SIPs was an experiment. We tried it. It's very complicated.
Right.
To get a SIP house, it's a lot of work to coordinate that ahead of time for the architect, for the designers. And we just find ourselves doing shop drawing after shop drawing review, and it's like pouring ungodly amount of hours into trying to get this right, and then it gets delivered and it's still wrong.
Right. Yeah. and where's the closest factory? It's like,
you have to ship them in from
Georgia or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we stopped. Well, besides that, SIPs are cool.
Yeah. Right.
So like I would use SIPs again for the right project. It's simple, very simple form. But we've started looking at other things. So right now we're building a lot with just traditional 2x with an exterior insulated R sheathing, which you're seeing a lot all over the place. So we're using that, and then the key is your windows. You definitely have to have high performance windows, and then you got to air seal it. And we're using the vapor barrier to air seal.
What vapor barrier you guys like to use? Like
Siga?
Yeah,
I think they're called. It's the product is Madrex, something like that. It's a white film. And it's vapor smart, so that it allows drying to both sides of the wall. So it's a pretty cool product.
It's like sheet applied. It's not like liquid applied. Like
No, it's a roll that you roll and you staple to the studs, and,
really?
and then you make sure you tape the whole thing.
Yeah.
But that's how we're getting our air barrier.
And just a lot better than Tyvek or something.
Oh,
like,
definitely, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you see the Tyvek, the weather barrier stuff that you see flapping in the wind all over town.
Yeah.
You're like, what is that really doing?
you're putting your vapor barrier over the top of your zip panel, or with
So-
that you're just taping seams. And
Yeah, so the zip R sheathing,
Mm-hmm.
that the green face, that's
Right.
already a weather barrier.
Right. Yeah.
So then all we're doing with that on the exterior is just taping the seams.
Yeah.
And then so now that gives you a good weather barrier. On the inside of the wall, the warm side, we're installing a vapor barrier, which is the Siga product, which is it's got a premium. Like if you hire an insulator and you want blowing bats, they're going to come in and put up a plastic sheet. That's vapor barrier. So we go one step above that and install that Siga system, which we tape the crap out of basically.
Huh. Nice. Okay. Yeah. And then you just jip over the top of that.
Yep. And then you just chip over that. Yep. Yeah. So that's really the magic behind high performance is getting a good R value.
Yeah. What do you try to get with your walls?
Usually we're getting like 30, 35.
Okay, yeah. Nice.
Comes 20.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're filling the 2x6 cavity, and you're
And then
doing
like an R12 sometimes when we use like the 2.5 inch.
Nice.
And then it's the high performance window, so that's the premium. If you show a client and you try to compare apples to apples, like here's a Marvin package and here's your Alpine window package, they're gonna be like, no freaking way.
Yeah.
But you've got to present it in a holistic.
Yeah.
Here's what your building envelope is, and then your mechanics can significantly reduce because we don't need, that much. Yeah.
And
HVAC.
you're able to show them those analytics and say
Again, because we're design build, we have to budget this stuff off the bat. So yeah, we do need to show the clients that.
And that gets pretty close. I mean, just in upfront costs, or it has to be lifetime cost to.
Yeah, there's a premium,
Right.
And there's different thresholds that you can take it. Like you can go full on passive file certification, and that has a high premium. Like for a single family house, probably 25%. And we've priced that and budgeted, designed it and budgeted it, and I can with some confidence tell you that a single family house that if you want to certify it, it's going to be like a 25% premium to code built. But you can scale that back. You don't have to certify it. You don't have to hit R50 in your walls because that's what it would require to get a passive file certification. You don't have to, go 100% thermally unbridged everywhere. You don't have to do triple pane windows.
Wow. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's things that you can scale down and still end up with a darn good house. Our rep from that sells us our windows, Todd Collins. He's a good passive house guy. He knows his stuff like the back of his hand. He has that saying. It's like darn good house. Yeah.
What are you seeing price per square foot like at right now? Like for something like the low high performance house, like.
Well, that one, like I said, there was another GC that built that. So I'm not quite sure what it ended up costing.
Yeah.
Because we get, as architects, that end up handing the drawings off. We just don't get privy to that info. But when we design build stuff, the stuff that we're building and we're seeing cost on, I'm seeing baseline $350 a square foot.
$350.
Yeah. Baseline. Now,
Baseline,
with this inflation.
Like special. And,
Yeah. So like if you want a high performance house, you got to start thinking about 400, which is crazy. So you got to think about it as like a long-term thing, because it's gonna cost a lot to build it, but then once you're there, you're going to be super comfortable. That's like number one thing. You can, like in dead of winter, you can hang out in your underwear in your house and just be fine.
Right. Yeah. With very little energy costs.
Yep. So $10 bills.
Yeah.
It's tough. It really is tough right now. I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody does, obviously.
Yeah.
But like, we're all kind of bracing. You know what I mean? Because like the costs are just getting out of control right now. But we're, people are still building. People are still pursuing projects. Yeah.
What did you say? Like was it something about the Marines where you were saying that like, you
you improvise, adapt, and overcome.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what Dana Crawford said. It's like, you've been doing this so long and you've had to have so many like fire drills, right? And like, do you get better at it? Do you, and she essentially said like, almost every single time that you have something that goes really wrong, you give it 24 hours and it fixes itself.
Yeah.
Or something comes up,
Yeah.
And it's that ability to be like, okay, it feels like the sky's falling right now, but tomorrow I think it'll probably still be out there. But just remember and believe. And yeah.
That's true. There's a lot of truth to that. I can't tell you how many times that, my inbox, you have your email inbox, and I've got like 50 unanswered emails that I've got to get back to.
Yeah.
But like, it seems to be like some of those just fall off just because they kind of resolve themselves.
Right.
So while they were a fire once upon a time, because I clearly needed to get back to it, it just resolves itself. So now it's, I can just take that star off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that just weighs down on you, doesn't it? Like, cool, man. Yeah, this is really good. It's really fun.
Yeah,
Nice
yeah. Thank you for, again, having me on your podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
Hi, I'm Eli. This show is made by my mom and dad and these people.
Heidi Mendoza.
Aaron Best.
Kyle Bruner.
Emily Childs.
Trevor Notsko.
Zach Huff.
Rob Cleary. All right, let's get a coffee. See ya.